Ella Brown dashed through the crowded streets of Manhattan, her heart slamming against her ribs like a trapped bird. The sharp wind tangled her hair as she clutched the flimsy folder containing her resume, a resume she had printed at a gas station minutes ago. It wasn't just another interview, it was her last hope before she would have to give up on the city altogether. If she missed this meeting, she thought bitterly, she might as well start packing for the long ride home to nowhere. Skidding to a halt at a red light, Ella glanced around desperately. Her reflection caught her eye in the glass window of a fancy downtown cafe. Smudged mascara, a lopsided blouse buttoned incorrectly, and a defiant smear of lipstick across her cheek. She looked like a disaster survivor. She let out a frantic laugh and rushed toward the window, smoothing her blouse and hurriedly wiping her face with the sleeve of her jacket. Inside the cafe, Logan Carter nursed a lukewarm coffee, tapping his finger absently against the side of the mug. The day had been unremarkable so far. Another string of meetings, another chain of decisions weighing on him. That was until the girl appeared, slapping at her reflection with a furious energy that made him blink. Her desperation, her authenticity, the way she fought to pull herself together. It was so raw that it snagged something inside him, something long dormant. Ella fumbled with her blouse, attempting to tame the chaos on her face. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she didn't care anymore. She had exactly 3 minutes to make herself presentable, and nothing, not even shame, was going to stop her. As she dug into her purse for a spare hair tie, she dropped the entire bag, sending makeup, coins, and a lone granola bar skidding across the sidewalk. With a muttered curse, she dropped to her knees, scrambling to collect her things. A hand appeared in her line of vision, offering her the runaway lipstick. She looked up and froze. A man, striking in a way that seemed almost unfair, was crouched beside her, an amused smile playing on his lips. His tailored suit suggested money. His eyes suggested mischief. His presence suggested trouble. "You're having a day, huh?" he said, voice rich and warm like melted chocolate. Ella flushed, stuffing her belongings back into her purse. "You could say that," she muttered, shoving the lipstick into a side pocket before it could betray her again. She accepted the lipstick from him without meeting his gaze, her pride crumbling by the second. "You missed one," he added, holding up a battered tube of mascara like it was some kind of sacred relic. Ella gave a strained smile and grabbed it, muttering another thanks before turning away as fast as humanly possible. "Good luck," he called after her, and for some inexplicable reason, she believed him. Ella didn't dare glance back as she sprinted toward the looming glass skyscraper at the end of the block. Inside, she found the lobby cold and unwelcoming, the marble floors gleaming like a warning. A receptionist with a polished smile handed her a visitor's badge without so much as glancing at her. Ella pinned it to her blouse and swallowed hard. The elevator doors slid open, and she stepped inside, joining a handful of sharply dressed professionals. As the elevator rose, she adjusted her blazer, smoothed her skirt, and tried to remember how to breathe like a normal human. Her hands trembled slightly when the doors opened on the 26th floor, spilling her into a sea of glass-walled offices and the low hum of industry. "Miss Brown," a voice called, startling her. A woman with severe bangs and an earpiece beckoned. "Right this way, Mr. Carter will see you now." Ella blinked, confused. Carter, that name sounded familiar, too familiar. Her stomach dropped into her shoes as she followed the woman down a sterile hallway to a corner office bigger than her entire apartment. Inside, standing behind a sleek, modern desk, was the man from the sidewalk, the stranger who had handed her runaway makeup with that maddeningly kind smile. Logan Carter. Of course. He looked up from a tablet, his expression unreadable. "Miss Brown," he said smoothly, as if they hadn't just met minutes ago under humiliating circumstances. "Please have a seat." Ella wanted to sink into the carpet and disappear, but somehow she found her legs moving forward. She sat down stiffly, clutching her resume like a life raft. She told herself it didn't matter. This was business. He was probably used to dealing with all kinds of train wrecks. Still, as their eyes met across the desk, she knew one thing with unsettling clarity. This was not going to be just another interview. This was going to change everything, and not necessarily in the way she expected. The silence in Logan's office was thick enough to suffocate. Ella sat rigidly in her chair, unsure whether to laugh, apologize, or simply run for her life. Logan watched her with an expression that was impossible to read, half amused, half calculating, as if he were deciding whether she was a lost cause or something far rarer, a genuine spark in a world of polished fakes. "Relax," Logan said at last, setting the tablet down with a soft click. "I've seen worse first impressions." His smile was almost kind, almost teasing, and somehow that made Ella's stomach twist even more violently. She gave a nervous laugh, adjusting her crumpled resume in her lap like it could shield her. "I'm not usually this much of a disaster," she blurted out, and immediately regretted it. Logan leaned back in his chair, studying her, elbows resting casually on the armrests. He looked so at ease, while she felt like a clown who had wandered into a royal court. And he wasn't making it any easier by just sitting there, silent. "You're real," Logan said finally. Two simple words, but they hit her harder than she expected. Real. Not perfect, not polished, but real. She didn't know whether to feel complimented or insulted. She chose to nod awkwardly, biting her lower lip to keep from rambling any further. "I like real," he added, almost to himself. Then he leaned forward, threading his fingers together atop the desk. "Tell me something, Miss Brown. Why do you want this job?" His voice shifted slightly, becoming sharper, more businesslike. The change made Ella sit up straighter, heart pounding again. She swallowed hard, searching for words that wouldn't sound like desperation. "Because I'm tired of being invisible," she said, surprising even herself. Logan raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. "I've worked jobs where no one even remembered my name. I've fought for every inch I've gotten. I know what it means to show up when no one expects anything from you." For a moment, Logan just stared at her. No polite nod, no quick scribble on a notepad. Just that intense, unwavering gaze that made her want to squirm and stand taller at the same time. Then, without warning, he smiled. A real smile this time, not the polished kind CEOs wear at press conferences. "Good answer," he said simply. Ella let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You're not here because of your GPA or your connections. You're here because you're hungry. And hunger," Logan said, tapping his fingers once, "against the desk, is more valuable than a perfect resume." Ella blinked, unsure whether she was dreaming. Was this how interviews normally went? Somehow she doubted it. Logan Carter didn't seem like the kind of man who did anything the normal way. Before she could find a suitable response, Logan stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the glittering city skyline. "You know," he said, almost thoughtfully, "I built this company because I was tired of playing by everyone else's rules. I wanted a place where outsiders could win." He turned back to her, and there was a glint in his eye she hadn't seen before, a dangerous kind of hope. "The question is, do you want to be one of them?" Ella's mouth went dry. Was he offering her the job, just like that? She opened her mouth to ask for clarification, but Logan held up a hand. "Don't answer yet. I'm not offering you a position. I'm offering you a test." His smile widened just slightly, predatory and inviting all at once. "A test?" she echoed, her voice trembling despite herself. Logan nodded, walking back to his desk and picking up a small, plain white envelope. He tossed it toward her, and it landed on the table between them. Inside are 3 tasks. Complete them within 72 hours. No instructions, no help. Ella stared at the envelope like it might explode. This wasn't an interview. This was something else entirely. She hesitated, reaching out slowly, feeling the weight of it. Logan watched her with a calm patience that felt oddly like a challenge, daring her to walk away or step into the unknown. "What happens if I fail?" she asked quietly, fingers brushing the edge of the envelope. Logan's smile turned almost gentle. "Then you'll be exactly where you were before you walked in. Nothing to lose, right?" It was a simple answer, but it chilled her. Because deep down, she knew she was already running on empty. She nodded once, tucking the envelope under her arm as she stood. Her legs felt shaky, but she forced herself to walk toward the door with something resembling dignity. Logan didn't call after her, didn't offer words of encouragement. He simply watched, as if her choice had already told him everything he needed to know. As Ella stepped back into the buzzing lobby, the envelope burning against her side, she realized 2 things with sudden, blinding clarity. First, she wasn't ready for this. Not even close. And second, more terrifying than anything, she wanted it anyway. She wanted it so badly she could taste it. She pushed open the glass doors and stepped into the cold street, the envelope clutched to her chest. Above her, the city lights flickered like distant stars, unbothered by the tiny human chaos unfolding below. Ella Brown had 72 hours to prove herself to a man who broke the rules, and to a city that didn't care if she sank or soared. And somehow, against all odds, she was ready to fight. Ella barely slept that night. She sat on the edge of her lumpy bed, the envelope lying untouched beside her like a sleeping bomb. She kept telling herself it was just a piece of paper, but her heart knew better. Whatever was inside could either open a door she thought was locked forever, or slam it harder than before. Fear prickled at her skin like static. At dawn, when the city was still cloaked in that strange silver light, Ella finally tore open the envelope with trembling fingers. 3 slips of paper fell into her lap. No logos, no headers, just plain instructions typed neatly in an unassuming font. She picked up the first one, feeling the weight of it settle on her chest. Task 1. Find a mistake we made, one no one else has caught yet. Fix it without permission. Ella frowned, rereading it twice. What mistake? In what? It was maddeningly vague. The company was massive, departments, divisions, oceans of paperwork and campaigns. Finding one error felt like searching for a needle in a pile of needles. And fixing it without permission? That sounded dangerously close to sabotage. The second slip of paper was no less cryptic. Task 2. Make someone believe in you. Someone who doesn't want to. That one hit her harder than she wanted to admit. Winning over cynics wasn't exactly her strong suit. She had spent most of her life trying to blend in, trying not to be noticed. The thought of forcing someone to see her, really see her, left her feeling exposed and raw. The third task was perhaps the cruelest of all. Task 3. Risk something you can't afford to lose. Ella stared at the words until they blurred together. Risk something she couldn't afford to lose. She didn't have anything left. No money, no prestige, no backup plans. What did Logan expect her to gamble with? Her dignity, her pride, her soul? She buried her face in her hands, the enormity of it crushing her. For a few minutes, she just sat there, breathing in the sour air of her apartment, letting the panic roll over her. Then slowly, grimly, she pulled herself upright. She hadn't come this far to back down now. If Logan wanted proof that she was made for more, she would find a way to give it to him. By mid-morning, Ella was back in the gleaming lobby of Carter Industries, her visitor badge digging into her skin like a brand. She moved quickly, head down, dodging polished executives and whispered conversations. No one looked at her, no one saw her. Good. She needed invisibility right now. She slipped into the marketing department first, scanning the bulletin boards, the open project files carelessly left on desks. She knew it was risky, trespassing where she had no permission, but that was exactly what Logan wanted. Somewhere, in the chaos, there had to be a thread she could tug loose. Hours passed. Her stomach rumbled in protest. Her legs ached from standing. Doubt crept in like a slow leak. Maybe she was in over her head. Maybe she wasn't cut out for this world of silent wars and hidden battles. Then, just as she was about to give up, she saw it. A minor campaign error buried deep in a client's press release. The press release stated the wrong launch date, a tiny, almost invisible typo. But it was a date tied to millions in marketing spend. One day off, and they could lose major press coverage. Ella's pulse spiked. Here it was, her mistake, her opening. But now came the hard part, fixing it without permission. She couldn't just walk into an executive's office and announce it. She needed to be clever, smart, untraceable. Moving quickly, she used an intern's computer left unlocked, sent a correction email to the PR firm posing as an assistant, and then deleted every trace. When she finally stood up, her knees wobbled. She felt exhilarated and terrified all at once, like someone who had jumped from a plane without checking their parachute. She needed air. She needed distance. But first, she needed to believe that somehow Logan Carter would find out exactly what she had done, and that it would matter. Ella pushed open the heavy glass doors, stepping back into the blinding light of the afternoon. The city was louder now, buzzing with life and noise and endless motion. She clutched the remaining 2 slips of paper tighter in her hand, the ink already beginning to smudge from her sweating palms. 2 tasks left, 2 chances to either climb higher than she ever had, or fall harder than she could survive. And she had already started to realize Logan Carter wasn't just testing her skills, he was testing her soul. Ella barely had time to breathe before she realized how much deeper the rabbit hole went. As she exited Carter Industries that afternoon, her mind raced with possibilities, fears, and questions she couldn't yet articulate. She had completed task 1, at least she thought she had, but now she had to do the unthinkable, make someone believe in her. Someone who didn't even want to. The obvious target was clear from the beginning: Meredith Sharp, Vice President of Marketing, and notorious for dismantling interns with a single glance. Ella had heard whispers in the elevator, how Meredith never smiled, never compromised, and certainly never suffered fools. Winning her over would be like teaching a shark to love goldfish. But Ella was out of choices. She spent that evening in her shoebox apartment, researching everything she could about Meredith. LinkedIn profiles, conference interviews, articles. In trade magazines, Ella devoured it all like a starving animal. One thing became clear: Meredith valued results over promises. She didn't want words, she wanted proof. If Ella could somehow create a victory Meredith couldn't ignore, maybe, just maybe, she could win her grudging respect. The next morning, Ella arrived at Carter Industries before sunrise. The janitors hadn't even finished cleaning. She wore her one good blazer and a scarf to hide the coffee stains she had failed to scrub out. She didn't belong here, not yet, but she was determined to act like she did. She moved through the empty corridors like a ghost, heart hammering with every step. Meredith's office was on the 24th floor, 2 levels below Logan's domain. Ella didn't dare knock. Instead, she left a sealed envelope on the desk. Inside was a detailed proposal, a real one, outlining how a recent social media campaign could be turned around with minor tweaks and better targeting. No promises, just solutions. The kind Meredith respected. She didn't sign the proposal. She left it anonymous, knowing that attaching her name too soon could backfire. She needed the work to speak for itself first. Ella turned and slipped away, pulse racing, every nerve in her body on edge. She didn't know if it would work. She didn't even know if Meredith would read it. but she had risked something precious, her hope. Later that afternoon, Ella lurked near the marketing floor, pretending to review a bulletin board while sneaking glances at Meredith's glass office. For hours, nothing happened, no sign that the envelope had even been touched. Ella felt her heart sinking into her shoes. Maybe it had been a stupid plan after all. Maybe she was doomed to stay invisible. But then it happened. Meredith picked up the envelope. Ella watched from a distance as the woman's expression changed. First suspicion, then curiosity, then something else. She read the proposal slowly, flipping pages, pausing once to scribble a note in the margin. Ella's breath caught in her throat. When Meredith finally set the packet down, she didn't crumple it. She didn't toss it in the trash. She slid it neatly into her drawer. The next morning, the changes Ella had suggested appeared online. New hashtags, sharper headlines, a subtle shift in tone that only someone obsessive would notice. And Ella noticed. She nearly wept right there in the lobby. Meredith had acted. Meredith had trusted the idea. That was as close to a miracle as Ella had ever witnessed. Yet, as she celebrated silently, a gnawing thought wormed its way into her mind. Who else was watching? Because it wasn't just Meredith. More and more, Ella felt the weight of unseen eyes tracking her movements. Conversations that hushed when she walked by, colleagues who avoided her gaze. Something was happening behind the pristine walls of Carter Industries, something she didn't understand yet. The atmosphere was different now, charged, like a storm. Building out at sea, Ella caught glimpses of executives whispering furiously in corners, of urgent emails flashing across unattended screens. Carter Industries was not just a beacon of innovation, it was a battlefield, and somehow, by completing Logan's tasks, Ella had stumbled into its heart. She walked to the elevator that evening, clutching the last slip of paper. Risk something you can't afford to lose. The words felt heavier now, almost prophetic. It wasn't just about risking pride anymore. It wasn't about impressing Logan. It was about surviving whatever was quietly, mercilessly unfolding around her. And the terrifying part was, she still didn't know what the real game was, but she was about to find out, whether she wanted to or not. Ella didn't return to her apartment that night. She found herself wandering the streets instead, feeling the cold slice through her thin jacket like knives. The city around her buzzed and pulsed, but inside she was numb. She replayed the tasks in her mind like a broken record, asking herself the same question over and over. Was she making the right sacrifices, or just blindly rushing toward disaster? At a small diner that smelled of burnt coffee and broken dreams, she collapsed into a booth and ordered a tea she couldn't afford. She pulled out the third slip of paper again, smoothing its wrinkles with trembling fingers. Risk something. You can't afford to lose. She had thought she understood it. She had thought risking her pride, her comfort, her job would be enough. But now she wasn't so sure. Because the truth was, Ella Brown didn't have much left to lose. Except, maybe, trust. And maybe, just maybe, the fragile faith she was building in herself. If Logan asked her to risk that, to gamble the tiny flame she had fought so hard to keep alive, would she do it? Could she? Her tea went cold as she stared out the window thinking. She needed to take a risk so bold, so reckless, that it couldn't be mistaken for anything else. It couldn't be an accident, it had to be a declaration, a shout into the void. She had to show Logan and herself that she wasn't afraid to burn if it meant reaching the stars. The next morning, Ella showed up at Carter Industries without a plan, no cover story, no safety net. She took the elevator straight to the top floor, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She wasn't invited, she wasn't expected, and she didn't care. That was the risk. She was betting it all, her job, her future, her self-respect, on one insane, impossible gamble. The doors to Logan's office were closed. She hesitated for half a heartbeat, then knocked. Silence. Then a voice she knew too well. "Come in." Ella pushed the door open and stepped inside, clutching nothing but her fear and stubbornness. Logan looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face before it was quickly masked. "Miss Brown," he said smoothly, folding his hands on the desk. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" His tone was light, but his eyes were sharp, searching. He knew, somehow he knew she wasn't here for anything ordinary. Ella forced herself to walk forward, standing awkwardly in front of his desk like a soldier reporting for duty. "I'm here," she said, voice steady despite the quake in her chest, "to cash in the risk you asked for." Logan's eyebrows lifted slightly. He leaned back, studying her like she was a puzzle he had almost finished solving. "Go on," he said softly. Ella licked her lips. "I have no appointment, no credentials that matter, no safety net. I could be thrown out of this building by security in 5 minutes, but I'm standing here anyway." She took a breath, chest tightening. "Because I'm not asking for a job anymore, Mr. Carter. I'm asking for a place, a real place." For a long moment, Logan said nothing. The city sprawled behind him in the windows, glittering and vast. Then slowly he stood. He walked around the desk until he was standing in front of her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "You realize," he murmured, "that by doing this, you've left yourself with no second chances." Ella nodded. She couldn't trust her voice now. Logan studied her for another agonizing second. Then, without breaking eye contact, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver key card. He held it out between 2 fingers, a silent invitation. Ella stared at it like it might bite her. "3rd floor," he said. "Innovation lab. They'll be expecting someone, but not you." A slow smile ghosted across his lips. "Make them believe you belong. Build something, break something, prove you're more than the sum of your mistakes." Ella reached out and took the card, her hand brushing his. Static crackled between them. Not the kind you get from fabric or winter air. The other kind. The kind that changes things. She closed her fingers around the keycard and stepped back, pulse roaring in her ears. "Thank you," she whispered, meaning it more than he could ever know. Logan just gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. As Ella turned and walked out of his office, she felt like she was walking out of her old life entirely and into something she couldn't yet define. In the elevator, she stared at the keycard, her reflection fragmented across the mirrored walls. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't running anymore. She wasn't fixing her hair in a stranger's window, pretending to belong. She was walking into the fire with her eyes wide open, and somehow she wasn't afraid, not anymore. The 3rd floor felt like another world entirely. Ella stepped into the innovation lab and was immediately swallowed by a hum of low voices, whirring machines, and the faint metallic scent of creation. The space was all open ceilings and chaotic desks, a place where the boundaries between genius and madness blurred beyond recognition. This wasn't a corporate floor, it was a battleground for ideas. A few heads turned as she entered, some curious, others suspicious. Ella squared her shoulders and walked forward like she had every right to be there, even though every cell in her body screamed otherwise. She clutched the silver keycard like a talisman, the only proof she wasn't an imposter. Eyes followed her, weighing, judging. She couldn't afford to falter. A tall man with a clipped beard and thick-rimmed glasses approached. "Name?" he asked sharply, clipboard in hand. Ella's mind scrambled for a cover story, but she realized she didn't need one. Logan had given her permission, and for once, she leaned into that borrowed authority. "Ella Brown," she said, clear and steady. "Temporary assignment." The man raised an eyebrow, but said nothing more. He scribbled something and waved her toward a workstation. No questions, no fanfare, just a silent, grudging acceptance. Ella exhaled slowly, setting her bag down with shaking hands. She had crossed the threshold. Now came the hard part, proving she deserved to stay. Days blurred into nights as Ella threw herself into the work. She wasn't a tech expert, but she knew how to see the missing pieces, the gaps others overlooked. She suggested improvements, solved bottlenecks, and offered solutions that made the engineers pause, frown, and then nod reluctantly. Little by little, she carved out a place among them. But something else began to shift, too. It wasn't just the work, it was Logan. He started appearing more often on the third floor, always under some thin excuse, checking progress, consulting with the teams, observing. Yet somehow, his gaze always found Ella in the crowd. Their eyes would lock for half a second longer than necessary, enough to spark, but not enough to burn. Once, when she struggled with a presentation outline, Logan appeared beside her without warning. He didn't say anything, just leaned over, picked up a marker, and sketched a quick diagram that made everything click. Their hands brushed. Ella's breath caught. Logan didn't move away immediately. For a heartbeat, they just stayed there. The air between them crackled. Words would have ruined it, so they said nothing. Later, Ella caught him laughing quietly at one of her scribbled notes left on a whiteboard, a terrible doodle of a light bulb with arms and legs. She didn't know why it made her chest ache so fiercely, seeing him laugh like that. Maybe because she realized she wasn't just earning his professional respect anymore. She was crawling under his skin, but danger loomed like a shadow they couldn't name. Ella overheard whispers during late nights in the lab, fragmented sentences about a board coup, about power struggles, about betrayals brewing beneath Carter Industries' polished surface. The more she listened, the more she realized Logan wasn't untouchable. He was fighting a war from within, and most of his enemies wore the same badges and smiles she passed every day. One evening, as Ella gathered her things, she noticed Logan, standing alone by the massive window, staring out into the city with a posture that spoke volumes. His shoulders were tight, his jaw set, his entire frame radiating a battle against invisible foes. Without thinking, she approached him. "You look like you're carrying the whole damn skyline on your back," she said softly. Logan turned, surprise, flickering across his face, then quickly masked. He gave a small, tired smile. "Some weights are easier to carry when no one knows you're doing it." Ella hesitated, then spoke before fear could stop her. "You don't have to carry it alone." For the first time since they met, Logan looked vulnerable. Not the curated vulnerability executives sometimes showed to seem human, but something raw and unguarded. His eyes held hers for a long moment, filled with something unspoken, something dangerous and beautiful all at once. He didn't say thank you. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. The next morning, the atmosphere inside Carter Industries had shifted again, almost imperceptibly, like the barely noticeable change in the air before a thunderstorm. Ella felt it the moment she stepped through the glass doors. The way conversations stiffened, the way glances became sharper, heavier. Something had cracked beneath the pristine surface, and the fractures were spreading. She moved through the corridors with cautious steps, instincts prickling. The innovation lab, once a chaotic hive of invention, now hummed with a tense, brittle energy. Teams whispered behind half-closed doors. Files were clutched tighter. Ella sensed it without understanding it fully. Alliances were forming in the shadows, and loyalties were being weighed like currency. In a quiet moment between meetings, Ella caught a glimpse of Meredith Sharp speaking in hushed tones with a man she didn't recognize. An executive from another division, judging by his expensive watch and wary eyes. When Meredith noticed Ella watching, she offered a thin, mechanical smile that didn't touch her eyes. Ella pretended not to see and moved on, heart pounding. Later, as she reviewed system prototypes, she found inconsistencies in access logs, strange logins at odd hours, changes made and quickly covered up. Ella wasn't an IT specialist, but even she knew enough to realize this wasn't normal. Someone inside Carter Industries was planting traps, setting up quiet collapses that would only detonate when it was too late. She debated telling Logan immediately, but something stopped her. He was already fighting battles she couldn't name. If she brought him problems without solutions, would she just be another weight dragging him down? Ella decided to gather more proof before she approached him. She would fight smart, or she wouldn't fight at all. The days blurred into each other after that, everyone heavier than the last. Ella slept less, ate less, thought more. She started noticing small changes in Logan too, the way his smiles grew rarer, the way exhaustion haunted the corners of his mouth, the way his eyes flickered toward the closed doors of the boardroom with something dangerously close to distrust. Still, amidst the growing storm, their connection deepened in ways neither dared name. A glance across a crowded lab, a brief, silent exchange in the elevator, a shared smirk over a ridiculous typo during a meeting. Little things, small threads weaving a bond stronger than either realized until it was already woven tight. One evening, when most of the building had emptied out, Ella found Logan in the small library hidden on the 20th floor. A forgotten, dusty space filled with old blueprints and design sketches. He sat slumped in an armchair, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, a legal pad full of angry scribbles resting on his knee. Without speaking, she sat across from him, folding her legs beneath her like a child hiding from the storm. For a while, they just sat there, listening to the faint hum of the world beyond their fragile sanctuary. Then, softly, Logan spoke. "Do you ever feel like you're building something everyone secretly hopes will fail?" Ella met his gaze without flinching. "All the time," she whispered. Logan smiled, but it was a broken thing. "You get tired of fighting ghosts." She nodded. "Ghosts, or people who look like friends until they show their teeth." The words hung between them, heavier than air. Logan closed the legal pad and tossed it onto the table with a frustrated sigh. "They think because I smile in meetings and wear the right suits, I don't see it. But I do. Every move, every knife waiting for my back." Ella leaned forward slightly, voice low. "Then let them underestimate you. Smile back, wear the suits, and when they finally strike—" She paused, locking eyes with him. "You'll already be 3 steps ahead." For a second, Logan said nothing. Then a slow, dangerous smile curved his mouth, this time real, this time reaching his eyes. "You," he said quietly, "are not what I expected." Ella smiled back, but her heart hammered against her ribs, terrified of what was coming, and more terrified of how much she already cared. Outside the library, the city pulsed on, oblivious. Inside, 2 souls stitched closer together with every passing second. And the war, silent but inevitable, crept ever nearer. The following days at Carter Industries felt like walking across a frozen lake, the ice groaning beneath every step. Smiles became thinner, meetings became shorter, sharper. People passed each other in the halls, with eyes darting sideways, lips pressed into tight lines. Ella moved through it all like a ghost, feeling every crack deepen beneath her feet. In the innovation lab, the energy shifted from electric to brittle. Conversations were guarded, glances over shoulders became reflexive. Even the normally exuberant engineers grew quiet, as if speaking too loudly might trigger some unseen alarm. Ella did her best to stay invisible, but she could feel it, whispers trailing in her wake like a second skin. Late one evening, as she tidied her workstation, she caught a sliver of conversation near the printer room, 2 senior managers murmuring behind a half-closed door. She recognized one voice, Kenneth Mason, head of strategic operations, a man known for his strategic mind and ruthless ambition. The words she heard made her blood run cold. Papers are ready. Once it leaks, Carter won't be able to survive the vote. Ella froze, heart thundering. Vote. Leak. She didn't need context to understand the implications. Someone, or maybe several someones, were orchestrating a coup, and Logan, who trusted too much and fought too quietly, might not even see it. Coming until it was too late. For a long moment she debated what to do. Reporting it wasn't an option. She didn't even know who she could trust anymore. Meredith. Kenneth. They were too entangled. Logan. She didn't have proof. Just pieces of conversations, half-formed suspicions, and a sinking certainty that the company she was beginning to love was eating itself alive. She tucked the knowledge into her chest like a blade, sharp and dangerous, and left the building. With her coat pulled tight against the cutting wind, she couldn't afford a misstep now. One wrong move, and she'd be swept under along with him. But if she did nothing, she'd lose him anyway. Maybe lose herself, too. The next morning, Logan called. An impromptu meeting in the Innovation Lab. His face was calm, composed, the CEO mask firmly in place. But Ella, who had learned to read the silent language beneath his surface, saw the strain there, the faint tightness around his eyes, the clenched jaw barely hidden by his easy smile. "We're on the edge of something extraordinary," Logan said, voice steady. "And whenever you're close to changing the world pushes back harder." He let his gaze sweep the room, landing briefly, intentionally, on Ella. "Remember why you're here, and remember who you're building it for." Ella's chest tightened. She knew his words weren't just about innovation. They were a call to arms, quiet and desperate, a warning disguised as inspiration, a plea to anyone who still believed in the dream to hold the line just a little longer. After the meeting, as the crowd dispersed in low murmurs, Logan lingered near Ella's desk. He didn't say anything, just stood there for a moment, as if anchoring himself. Finally, in a voice low enough only she could hear, he said, "If you see a storm coming, don't try to outrun it. Build a shelter." It was a strange thing to say, and yet it made perfect sense. Ella nodded slightly, the words etching themselves into her bones. She wanted to reach out, to say something, anything to lighten the weight he carried, but there was no space for softness now, only preparation, only resolve. That night, Ella stayed late again. As the building emptied, she slipped into the forgotten library where Logan had once hidden from the world. She traced the spines of dusty books, trying to piece together a plan. From the wreckage of what she knew, somewhere between hope and fear, she realized the truth. She wasn't just fighting for a job anymore. She was fighting for him, for the dream he carried so recklessly in his battered hands, for herself, for all the invisible ones who had never been given a real chance before. And she was willing to risk everything, even her heart. Especially her heart. It happened so quickly Ella almost didn't believe it was real. One moment she was standing in the Innovation Lab, reviewing prototype specs, and the next she was being summoned urgently to the 24th floor by an anonymous internal message. The note was brief, unsigned. "Come alone. Bring nothing. Conference. Room C." Her instincts screamed at her to run, but she went anyway. The hallway outside Conference Room C was eerily silent, the overhead lights casting long, skeletal shadows against the walls. Ella hesitated for half a breath before pushing the door open and immediately felt the shift in the air, the trap, snapping shut around her. Meredith Sharp and Kenneth Mason sat at the polished table, folders spread out in front of them like weapons. "Ella Brown," Meredith said smoothly, her smile slicing like a blade. "We were wondering when you'd finally show up." Kenneth didn't smile. His expression was pure calculation, cold and clinical. Ella's hands tightened into fists at her sides, her skin crawling. Something was very, very wrong. "You've been Busy, Kenneth said, sliding a thick folder across the table toward her. Ella glanced down and felt her stomach plummet. Inside were copies of internal emails, printouts of system access logs, fabricated evidence designed to suggest she had leaked sensitive information to an outside competitor. It was a frame-up, built carefully, expertly. "You're mistaken," Ella said, voice tight. "I didn't do any of this." "Of course you didn't," Meredith said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "But unfortunately perception is reality in places like this, and the perception, well, it's not in your favor." Kenneth leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Sign. A quiet resignation. Leave today, and we'll make sure it doesn't escalate. No lawsuits, no damage to your name." Ella's mind raced, heart pounding in her ears. If she fought this, she'd lose. She had no allies, no defense. They had engineered this perfectly. She was expendable, a pawn they were sacrificing to wound Logan Carter indirectly. Another crack in the empire they were trying to topple from. The inside. She thought of running. She thought of shouting. Instead, she did something far more dangerous. She stayed silent. She met Meredith's cool gaze and Kenneth's smirk without flinching. She picked up the resignation form they had laid out for her, and very calmly, very deliberately, she tore it cleanly in half. "You picked the wrong pawn," she said quietly. For a moment, the only sound was the paper tearing. Then Meredith's eyes narrowed, and Kenneth's smirk slipped, just slightly. "You'll regret this," he said under his breath. Ella gave a small, razor-sharp smile. "Maybe, but not today." She turned and walked out of the room before they could see her hands trembling. Outside, she didn't stop. Not at the elevator, not at the lobby, not even when the cold wind slapped her face like punishment. She kept walking, faster and faster, until she was half running through the side streets of Manhattan, dodging traffic, blind to everything but the roaring in her blood. Finally, breathless and shaking, she ducked into an alley between two office buildings and pressed her back against the cold brick wall. Only then did she let herself crumble, knees buckling, shoulders shaking with silent, furious sobs. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. She had done everything they asked. She had fought so hard, and it still wasn't enough. Her phone buzzed. In her pocket, a harsh, vibrating reminder that the world didn't stop just because her heart had been broken open. She fumbled it out with numb fingers and froze when she saw the name on the screen, Logan Carter. For a long, trembling second, she just stared at it, afraid of what he would say, afraid of what she might have to confess. Then, before fear could paralyze her completely, she answered. Her voice was raw, barely above a whisper. "Hello? Where are you?" Logan's voice was sharp, worried, cutting through the noise in her head like a blade. She swallowed hard. "I'm fine." "You're not," he said instantly. "Come back, now, please." Ella closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, she let someone else fight for her. The ride back to Carter Industries was a blur. Logan's black SUV cut through traffic like a shark, slicing through murky waters. Ella sat in the passenger seat, clutching the seatbelt with white-knuckled hands, barely able to breathe. Logan didn't speak. His jaw was locked, his eyes like twin storms brewing just beyond reach. When they pulled into the underground garage, Logan killed the engine but made no move to get out. Instead, he turned to her, his face etched in shadows. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said, voice low but vibrating with barely contained fury. Ella swallowed hard and started from the beginning, every detail spilling out like broken glass. She told him about the summons, the fabricated evidence, the resignation threat. She even told him about tearing up the paper, about walking away instead of surrendering. As she spoke, Logan's hands curled into fists against his knees, the muscles in his jaw twitching. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, absorbing every word like ammunition. When she finished, silence filled the car, heavy and suffocating. Logan leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they burned with a cold, merciless fire. "They think they can corner me by attacking you," he said, almost to himself. "They think hurting you will weaken me." Ella shook her head, feeling helpless. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Don't!" Logan cut in sharply. His voice softened a fraction. "Don't you dare apologize for being the only honest person in a room full of cowards." He exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "This isn't just about you, or even me. This is about taking back the company before it becomes something unrecognizable." He motioned for her to follow, and together they entered the service elevators. Quiet, discreet, unseen. As they ascended, Ella realized the real war was not fought in boardrooms or product launches. It was fought here, in the unseen corridors, in whispered betrayals and bloodless assassinations. And Logan Carter wasn't just another CEO. He was a king trying to hold a crumbling kingdom. They emerged onto a restricted floor Ella hadn't even known existed. Dark wood paneling, muted lighting, a stark contrast to the glass and steel facade of the building. Logan led her down a hallway to a locked office. He punched in a code, and the door swung open to reveal a command center. Screens, files, maps of Carter Industries' internal networks. "This," Logan said, waving a hand, "is where the real battle happens." Ella's breath caught. It was overwhelming, the sheer scale of it. Dozens of internal investigations, flagged security risks, secret board meetings she had never heard about. Names she recognized and names she didn't appeared. Again and again, in different reports, tied together like threads in a deadly web. "They're planning a takeover," Logan said flatly, "and they've been working on it for months." Ella turned to him, horror dawning. "Why didn't you stop them earlier?" Logan gave a bleak smile. "Because knowing is different from proving. And until I have proof, I can't act without looking paranoid. They want me to move too soon, make a mistake, give them what they need to cut me down legally." His eyes met hers, burning with conviction. But now they've gone too far. Ella felt something tighten in her chest. She wasn't just a pawn anymore. She was part of the board now. Unofficially maybe, invisibly perhaps, but part of it nonetheless. And she realized something else too. Logan trusted her, not because he had no one else, but because he chose to. "What do you need me to do?" she asked quietly. Logan smiled then, not the CEO smile, not the politician's mask, but the real one, raw and full of something dangerously close to hope. "Stay close, watch everything, and trust yourself. They're going to come after you harder now." Ella nodded, her fear crystallizing into something sharper, stronger. Resolve. As they stood there, two soldiers in an invisible war, Ella realized the storm wasn't coming anymore. It was already here. The attack came in the dead of night, like most cowardly strikes do. Ella was at home, curled under a threadbare blanket, when the buzz of her phone shattered the fragile peace. Half asleep, she fumbled to answer, heart lurching as she saw the name flashing on the screen. Emergency alert, Carter Industries. She answered instinctively, adrenaline shooting through her veins. A pre-recorded message blared into her ear. "Security breach, executive floors on lockdown, immediate investigation underway." Ella threw off her blanket, her mind racing. She didn't need details to know. This wasn't random. This was it, the first real blow. Pulling on jeans and sneakers, she bolted out the door, barely remembering to lock it. The subway was slow, almost taunting her with every agonizing stop. By the time she burst into the Carter Industries lobby, security teams were already fanned, out like an army of suits, badges flashing under harsh fluorescent lights. She spotted Logan near the back elevators, surrounded by guards and advisors barking into their phones. His face was grim, his entire body radiating tension. For a split, Second, his eyes met hers and softened just enough for her to breathe again. Then he turned, issuing sharp orders in clipped, furious bursts. Ella slipped around the edges of the chaos until she reached him. "What happened?" she whispered. Logan didn't answer immediately. He handed her a folder instead. Thick, heavy, damning. Inside were forged documents implicating Logan in financial misconduct, secret offshore accounts, bribery, all fabricated, all deadly. "They planted this," Logan said, voice low and tight. "Tonight, someone uploaded it directly into the board's private network. First thing tomorrow, the story breaks to the media. They want a public execution." His fists clenched, the veins on his forearms standing out stark against his skin. Ella's stomach twisted. "Is there a way to stop it?" she asked, praying for a solution. Logan shook his head, a bitter smile tugging at his mouth. "The board's already been notified. The only question now is whether they act before or after the scandal goes viral." He closed the folder with a hard snap. "Either way, they're coming. For me." Ella reached out without thinking, her hand brushing his. "We'll fight it." Logan's eyes searched hers for a long moment, pain, gratitude, something unspoken passing between them. "You shouldn't have to," he said quietly. "You shouldn't be dragged down with me." But she was already in it. Drowning or fighting, she was here. "There's no one else I'd rather drown with," she whispered back. It wasn't a love confession. It wasn't melodrama. It was something older, deeper, an oath between two souls bound by battle scars. Logan exhaled slowly and tucked the folder under his arm. "Come with me," he said, voice steady again. "If we're going down, we're not going down quietly." They moved through the building like ghosts, past stunned assistants and bewildered executives, until they reached the hidden command center. Inside, the screens were alive with chaos, emails exploding across networks, headlines leaking in. Real-time, the beginnings of a media-feeding frenzy. Logan stared at it all for a beat, then turned to her. "I need time. I need a distraction. I need—" He hesitated, something heavy settling behind his words. "I need you." Ella didn't hesitate. "Tell me what to do," she said. "Because sometimes love doesn't come wrapped in perfect words or golden promises. Sometimes it comes in moments like this, when you choose to stay, even as the world burns." They didn't have a detailed plan. There wasn't time for strategy meetings or careful alliances. It was war, pure and simple. Logan and Ella worked side by side in the dim glow of the hidden command center, fueled by adrenaline and something sharper, righteous fury. For every fake scandal Kenneth and Meredith unleashed, they would answer in kind. Ella's hands trembled as she typed, tracing digital fingerprints across Carter Industries' internal servers. She wasn't a hacker, but desperation made her resourceful. Piece by piece, she uncovered hidden folders, buried correspondence, coded threats exchanged between the conspirators. Proof that Meredith and Kenneth had been plotting Logan's downfall long before the public facade cracked. Logan, meanwhile, worked the phones like a chess master. Silent calls to old allies, forgotten favors resurrected from the dust. He spoke in short, clipped sentences, threading invisible nets across the battlefield. It wasn't about pleading innocence anymore. It was about forcing the enemy's hand before they could tighten the noose. Hours blurred together, the city beyond the glass windows fading into an irrelevant blur. Ella didn't know what time it was, only that exhaustion was clawing at the edges of her mind. But every time she thought of stopping, she looked at Logan. His focus, his ferocity, and found a little more strength to push on. Finally, Ella struck gold, a financial trail buried in a dummy corporation, an undeniable link tying Meredith to offshore accounts matching suspicious marketing deals. Proof she had siphoned millions from Carter Industries under the radar. Ella's breath caught as she pieced it together, realization crashing over her like a wave. "I found it," she whispered. Logan was at her side in an instant, reading over her shoulder. As the pieces fell into place, a grim smile curved his mouth. This is enough. For the first time in hours, hope flickered back into his voice, raw and dangerous. We don't just survive this, we destroy them. But victory would come at a cost. Logan leaned closer, his voice low. If we move now, it's public, it's bloody. You'll be dragged into it. No hiding anymore, Ella. His gaze searched hers, asking the question he wouldn't voice aloud. Are you ready to burn with me? Ella's heart hammered painfully, but she didn't look away. She had come too far, seen too much. She nodded once, a small, decisive movement. Let's set the fire. Logan's hand brushed hers under the table. Just a whisper of contact, but it grounded her more than any speech ever could. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. Leak the proof directly to the media before Kenneth and Meredith could release their manufactured scandal. Turn the weapons back on the attackers. Expose them first. Make them the villains before Logan could be painted as one. A knife to the throat, but delivered with a smile. Ella typed the final commands with trembling fingers. In seconds, encrypted. Copies of the documents flashed out across trusted journalist contacts, all scheduled to publish simultaneously. A storm already brewing was about to be ignited into a wildfire no PR firm could contain. When the last file was sent, Ella leaned back breathless. Logan turned to her, exhaustion and admiration etched across his face. No matter what happens next, he said, voice hoarse, you've already won, Ella Brown. You made them see you. Her throat tightened, but she managed a broken smile. Sirens wailed distantly in the city. Not police sirens. Something older, deeper, the sound of an empire cracking at its foundations. In the silence that followed, Logan offered her his hand, not as a CEO, not as a savior, but as an equal. Ella took it without hesitation. They stood together side by side, ready to face whatever would rise from the ashes. The news broke like an earthquake. By sunrise, every major outlet carried headlines splashed across their front pages. Executive. Conspiracy at Carter Industries. Millions diverted to offshore accounts. Board members under investigation. Ella watched the world catch fire from the corner of Logan's office, heart pounding, unable to tear her eyes from the endless scroll of chaos. Phones rang non-stop. PR managers barked orders into headsets. Legal teams flooded conference rooms like armies preparing for siege. But through it all, Logan stood calm and unyielding at the heart of the storm, radiating the kind of quiet authority that couldn't be faked. Ella knew. This was the real Logan Carter. This was the man they had tried to bury. Meredith Sharp was the first to fall. Security escorted her from the building before lunchtime, her sharp heels clicking against the marble like a funeral march. Kenneth Mason wasn't far behind, though he fought tooth and nail, his emails, offshore ties, and whispered betrayals now laid bare for the world to dissect and condemn. Ella should have felt triumphant. She should have reveled in their defeat. But instead, she felt something colder, sharper, gnawing at her gut. Because deep down, she knew this wasn't just about winning a battle. They had exposed the rot, but the damage to Carter Industries' soul was deeper than any scandal could explain away. And somehow, through it all, Logan hadn't smiled once. That evening, long after the offices emptied and the city drowned in rain, Ella found Logan sitting alone in the glass-walled library on the 20th floor, the same place where their unspoken alliance had first been born. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rumpled, his posture drained, but when he looked up at her, something inside him still burned. "You saved me," he said simply. Ella shook her head, throat thick. "No," she whispered. "You saved yourself. I just didn't let you forget you could." Logan gave a low, humorless chuckle and leaned back in the chair, running a hand through his hair. "Funny, I used to think strength meant standing alone. Now I know. It's standing with the right people. She crossed the room slowly, sitting across from him without ceremony. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not suffocating. Comfortable somehow. Honest. Finally, Logan spoke again, his voice rough. The board will meet tomorrow. They'll either solidify my control or strip it from me for optics. And if they try? Ella asked, barely breathing. Logan's eyes found hers across the rain-smeared glass. Then I walk away, he said. From all of it. Carter Industries. Everything I built. He smiled faintly, almost wistfully. Maybe it's time. The words should have crushed her. Instead, they felt strangely like freedom. But your Carter Industries, Ella said, hating the desperation in her voice. Without you, without me, Logan interrupted gently. It survives. Or it doesn't. Either way, it's no longer my war. For a moment, Ella saw it, the terrible weight he carried finally lifting. Not defeat, not surrender, just release. She realized then that Logan wasn't afraid of losing power. He was afraid of losing himself trying to keep it. She leaned forward, reaching out. Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally, as if they had always been meant to. Fit. You're not defined by this company, she said softly. You're defined by who you choose to fight for, and who chooses to fight for you. Logan closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. When he opened them again, the look he gave her wasn't one of a CEO looking at an employee. It was a man looking at the only thing left worth fighting for. The morning of the board meeting dawned grey and unwelcoming, the sky hanging low over the city like a warning. Ella sat at the far end of the empty conference hall, her stomach twisted in knots. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't invited, but Logan hadn't sent her away, and she wasn't about to leave him now. One by one, the board members filed in, impeccably dressed, faces carved from stone. They whispered behind hands, exchanged tight smiles, pretended civility while sharpening their knives. It was all theater now, one last, brutal act. Ella watched it unfold with a heavy heart, feeling like a trespasser at a funeral. Logan entered last, no entourage, no performance, just a man walking into the arena, knowing full well the lions were hungry. He nodded once toward Ella, a tiny, almost imperceptible gesture, and took his place at the head of the long table. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Kenneth Mason's replacement, a smug man named Dwyer, cleared his throat. "We're here today," he began, oozing fake politeness, "to discuss the future leadership of Carter Industries. In light of recent turbulence." Ella gripped the edge of her seat until her knuckles turned white. This wasn't about justice, it was about blood. Logan sat still, unmoving, as accusations were murmured in coded phrases. Loss of trust, need for stability, preserving the company's public image. It was death by bureaucracy, death by 1,000 paper cuts. Ella wanted to scream, to tear down the farce with her bare hands. Then Dwyer made his move. He presented a motion, a vote of no confidence, effective immediately. Ella's chest hollowed out. She turned to look at Logan, expecting anger, expecting a fight, but he just smiled, small, tired, free. "I understand," Logan said simply. The words sucked the oxygen from the room. The board members shifted uncomfortably, as if they had hoped for a spectacle, not this calm surrender. Before they could gloat, Logan stood. He placed both hands flat on the table, leaning forward slightly, his voice soft but carrying undeniable authority. "You can strip my title," he said. "You can erase my name from the directories, but you cannot erase what I built, or the people who still believe in what Carter Industries could be." And then he turned to Ella, not to the board, not to the vultures circling, to her. Ella rose to her feet without thinking, heart hammering. Logan's gaze held hers, steady, unbreakable. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the company, not the betrayal, only the silent promise passing between them. We choose each other, no matter what. "I resign," Logan said finally, tearing the air apart with the simplicity of it. Chaos exploded instantly, shouts, protests, desperate attempts to salvage control. But Ella didn't hear any of it, because Logan was walking toward her, and she was already running to meet him. They left the building together, unbothered by the chaos exploding behind them. No bodyguards, no press statements, no apologies. Just Logan Carter and Ella Brown walking into the grey afternoon, shoulder to shoulder, as if the storm they had weathered had only made them stronger. The city roared around them, oblivious. Ella didn't look back. For the first time in months, maybe ever, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She didn't need a title or a badge or a glass office to know her worth. She had fought, she had stayed, she had chosen herself. And now, astonishingly, someone else had chosen her too, not out of pity, out of recognition. They walked for blocks in silence, past busy cafes and flooded gutters and impatient taxis. Eventually they found themselves on a quiet side street, where the noise of Manhattan softened to a dull hum. Logan stopped under a crooked awning, shaking rain from his hair. He turned to her then, really turned, all masks stripped away. The man, not the myth. "I don't have an empire anymore," he said quietly, voice rough with unshed emotion. "I don't have a plan. I don't even have a job." Ella smiled through the sting in her chest. "Good. Empires are overrated anyway." Logan gave a short, broken laugh, the kind that felt more like a prayer. "All I have is you," he said. She stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him against the cold drizzle. "Then you have everything," she said simply. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world shrank until it was just the two of them and the quiet between heartbeats. Then, without ceremony, Logan cupped her face in his hands. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was messy, desperate, fierce. The kind of kiss you only give when you've lost everything except the one person who matters. Ella melted into him, her hands gripping the lapels of his jacket as if anchoring herself to the only solid thing left in the universe. And for once, she didn't have to fight for air. She could just breathe. When they broke apart, Logan rested, his forehead against hers, eyes closed, breathing hard. "You make me believe in second chances," he whispered. Ella smiled, a real one this time, wide and reckless. "You make me believe I was never broken in the first place," she said. And it was true. Later, they found a tiny diner tucked between skyscrapers, the kind of place with sticky menus and chipped mugs. They shared burnt coffee and terrible pie, laughed until their cheeks hurt, and made plans they had no right to make. Not business. Plans, life plans. Plans built not from ambition, but from hope. Ella didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe Carter Industries would survive. Maybe it would crumble. Maybe the world would forget their names, but it didn't matter anymore. Because some victories aren't measured in titles or fortunes. They're measured in choosing love over fear, in standing up when you're expected to fall, in daring to look through the broken glass and still finding something beautiful on the other side. Ella Brown had walked into a storm thinking she had nothing to lose. She walked out knowing she had everything worth fighting for. Wow, what a story, right? I'd love to hear what you thought. Drop a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tell me where you're watching from. And hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out the other stories we have on the channel. There's so much more waiting for you.